Lindsay as a character is kind of a mystery for me. She leaves me with a lot of open questions, and I found that the fandom is divided on this character, and I think a part of this comes from the fact that we actually don't know that much about who she is. Most of what we do know about what she desires is hearsay. It comes from Dean, and Dean is an unreliable source. We only get a few snippets of who she really is, and in my research, I found that there are two opposing views of this character. The first view is that she's spoiled and naive. Under this narrative, Lindsay is demanding, lazy, and has an unrealistic dream of being a stay-at-home wife that expects to have all the luxuries of life without working. She convinced Dean to quit college and work because she wants a townhouse and a car. The other view is that Lindsay is an innocent bystander, and under this narrative, she is misrepresented by Dean. We never actually hear from Lindsay what she wants, and all that we know is what Dean says. He says in one scene that he wants those things too, so under this theory, Dean is overselling Lindsay's statements to justify his decisions. We don't know if Lindsay is not working because she doesn't want to, or because Dean says that she doesn't want to. Regardless of what view people hold, the fandom agrees on the fact that Dean's cheating wasn't justified, and I certainly agree with that. I have my own theory on this character, which I will delve into, but first I want to find out who Lindsay is to the best of my abilities. So, what do we know about Lindsay? We know that she started dating Dean sometime around season 3, episode 15, and they get married in season 4. She paid for Rory's Mark Twain magnet in 4th grade, and she likes Michelle Branch. I did too back in the day. We first meet Lindsay in season 3, so Rory sees Lindsay at a hockey game, and Lindsay's very awkward. She's polite to Rory, but you can tell that she's very uncomfortable. Rory soon finds out that Lindsay's dating Dean. I totally get Lindsay's reaction. If they were adults, I think this would have played out differently, but for a teenage girl, Lindsay's response makes sense to me. She hasn't seen Rory in a while, and now she's dating Rory's ex, so the awkwardness kind of makes sense in that moment. The next time that we see Lindsay, she's giving Rory the cold shoulder. She doesn't smile, she's very abrupt, and she tries to leave the conversation early. She's not flat out rude, but she is very, very cold, and we don't get an explanation as to why. I can only presume that Dean and Lindsay recently had a conversation about Rory that made Lindsay standoffish. Ultimately, however, Lindsay's coldness was used as a plot device to provide a parallel to Nicole and Lorelai. When they're speaking outside, Dean mentions that he got into Southern Connecticut State, and Lindsay gives a smile that suggests that she's proud of him. When we see Lindsay again, there's a complete 180 of her character, so all that coldness towards Rory is gone. They attend a high school party, and we see that Lindsay waves to Rory, and they later have a conversation. Lindsay's very sweet. She laughs when Rory makes a joke. She has this very innocent and naive persona in this episode, and I also wonder what Dean had to tell Lindsay about the fight that he had with Jess, because Lindsay was also at that party, so it makes me very curious. In episode 20, we find out that Dean proposed to Lindsay, and Rory is very shocked by this news, and honestly, I don't blame her. As now that we're at the point of the engagement, I want to talk about the length of Dean and Lindsay's relationship. So, Dean and Rory broke up in episode 7. Episode 9 we know was Thanksgiving, so that puts us at the end of November. Episode 15 is when we find out that they're dating. It's possible that they started dating earlier, however, so episode 20 they are engaged, and we are still 2 episodes away from graduation. If I were to give a generous timeline to their relationship, I would say they started dating sometime around December and got engaged in May, so that's about 6 months. What parents would allow this? Also, notably, Dean mentions that he's going to Southern Connecticut State and that Lindsay's coming with him, and that statement confuses me. Does he mean that she will also attend the university, or is she just going to be joining him at college just to chill with him? Because Southern Connecticut State is in New Haven, so that's 30-minute drive from Stars Hollow based on my estimate, and she wouldn't have to come with him if she's not attending the university. He could theoretically just commute, so that statement kind of confused me based on what happens later on. In season 4, Dean and Lindsay get married, and we learn that Lindsay brings a hot lunch for Dean to his work every single day, and she always brings something to the construction crew. When she sees Rory at the Dragonfly, she's nice to her and she says hi. So Lindsay doesn't seem to have a problem with Rory being there. What I find interesting in this scene is Lindsay's mom. She seems to be a little too involved in Lindsay's life.
Did Lindsay tell you we found a new dry cleaner?
No.
Tell him, Lindsay.
Why the heck is the mom there? Did anyone else think that it's a bit odd that Lindsay's mom also goes to Dean's worksite to bring lunch every day? Lindsay's mom also says that she wishes that she started to teach Lindsay how to cook sooner, and she seems to be excited by the prospect of children. Later on, we learn that Dean always slips out after dinner because Lindsay and her mom are cleaning up. Dean tells Luke that Lindsay's parents are very involved. Her dad is always around fixing things, and her mom is always there providing things. And Dean couches it in a nice way, but it just comes off as very clear that he's being completely stifled by that environment. In a later episode, Dean tells Rory that he's going to be taking a break from school because Lindsay has her heart set on a townhouse by the end of the year. He mentions that he also thinks that it's a good idea for him to quit and to work more hours because he wants the same things. Rory ironically flips out and says that he can't quit school, pot calling the kettle black there. Later on, Rory talks to Lane and she says how annoyed she is with Lindsay, saying, why doesn't she just get a job? What does she do all day? Honestly, those are very good questions, and I don't think we get a clear answer. Does Lindsay really do nothing, and if so, why? Does she not want to? So Lindsay overhears this conversation, which is super awkward, and she doesn't confront Rory, she just leaves. I do think it's notable that Lindsay is non-confrontational. We later learn that Lindsay doesn't want Dean to talk to Rory anymore. Normally, I don't think that that is the best approach in a relationship, to ban your partner from talking to someone else. The best thing to do is to communicate your feelings and your concerns, but they are teenagers, and considering what Lindsay heard, I think it kind of makes sense in this scenario, even though I still think the best approach is communication, but they are super young. In episode 20 of season 4, Dean and Lindsay get into a big fight, and I think that this is the scene that divides the fandom on Lindsay's character. So Lindsay and Dean had plans to go out that night with Erica and Dave. Lindsay shows up at Dean's work and finds out that he picked up an extra shift and can't go. She says, why did you say you could? Dean retorts with the fact that he told her that if there's a chance for extra shifts that he would pick them up, and that if she wants a townhouse, he has to work for these things. Lindsay doesn't deny Dean's statements. Her failure to deny that she wants a townhouse and a car can be used as evidence of the fact that she does indeed want these things, but we still don't know in what way or in what context she expressed those desires. Lindsay says that she sits home all day waiting for him to call, and again, I have the question of why? Does she have no plans on working or going to school? And is that what she really wants? Did they make that decision together? Has Dean suggested that she work? Whose idea was it for her to stay home? To be clear, there's nothing wrong with being a stay-at-home spouse, but it just makes no practical sense in this scenario because they don't have kids and they're not financially stable and they live in a relatively expensive area. So there's no practical reason for her to stay at home, and it just leaves me so puzzled. And we could speculate that it was Lindsay's decision to stay home, or we could speculate that it was a decision they made together, but there's really no answer, and it's such a confusing scenario given the position that they're in. In this fight between Lindsay and Dean, I would have to side with Lindsay. So I see this argument as not about working extra shifts, but about a break of a promise. He said that he was free to go out, they made plans with other people, and then he really late picked up an extra shift without telling anyone. And here's the thing, if this was a work emergency, I would 100% be on Dean's side, but Lindsay literally showed up at his work ready to go and then only finds out when she's already there that he's not free. So Dean failed to communicate, and we find out later that he has a cell phone. There's no reason why he couldn't call, and I do think it's odd to just not communicate in that particular situation. In season 5, we see Lindsay walking on eggshells around Dean. Dean comes home after sleeping with Rory. Lindsay says, you were working late again. Are you working tomorrow? Will you be home for dinner? So he doesn't even come home for dinner sometimes. She says that she found his phone in the couch cushions and she picked it up because it woke her up, and Dean flips out on her, and this puts Dean in the worst possible light. I saw one interesting comment wondering why the phone was in the couch cushions, so brings up an interesting question. Is he hiding his phone? Is he used to doing that sort of thing? Lindsay tries to apologize. She says that she was asleep when she picked it up, so she wasn't even thinking, and she says that she doesn't want to fight. When she's walking out, she asks if he's mad at her, and the way that she walks out makes it seem like she wants to touch him, but she's just too afraid to do so. Later, we see Rory overhearing Lindsay talking to a butcher asking for instructions on how to make roast beef because it's Dean's favorite. She's working very hard to save the marriage. She's super excited when the roast beef works out. So there's this level of skittishness and nervousness about her character that we see really come out in those scenes. In episode 2 of season 5, Rory asks her mom to give a letter to Dean, and this also makes no sense to me because Rory's only away for the summer in Europe, and I don't really understand why she couldn't wait until she got home to give Dean a letter or to talk to him. There's really not much of a difference because there's no time restriction on what she wants to tell Dean, and it's not like she's going to be gone for a year, so I just think it's so peculiar to decide to write a letter, make your mom give it to him, even though you're going to be home in a few weeks. We see that Lindsay has a very strong reaction when she finds out. She's throwing things out the window or she's yelling at Dean. Her reaction I don't think is excessive. It is very public and it could have been done privately, but we don't see her being aggressive but clearly very upset. And then we have a confrontation scene between Rory and Lorelai and Lindsay and her mom. They run into each other and Lindsay's mom goes off on Rory. In these scenes, we could see that it's the mom's moms who are standing up for their daughters. Lindsay is completely silent. She can't make eye contact. She's just looking down. She looks very upset. Rory's very much the same way. So we could see that the adults have to step in because the kids cannot handle the situation. So that was a unabridged breakdown of every single scene that Lindsay's in, and here's my take on this character. My take on Lindsay is that she is under the thumb of her parents. Her mom seems to be overly involved in her life. So my theory is that her parents raised her in a very strict, limited environment, being overly controlling. They trained her early on that she must marry early and have children. There's just something so unnerving about the fact that they let their teenage daughter get married after 6 months of dating someone. And they don't seem to have an issue with the fact that she's not in a secure financial position, and they don't expect her to go to work or go to school. Her mom seems perfectly happy with the fact that her daughter brings lunches to her husband every day and that she has no other financial security. And we've also seen that Dean displays controlling behavior. And people are not attracted to what they like. They're attracted to what they know. That's why people end up dating their parents in a way. So Lindsay went from one controlling environment to another. I think that she may have expressed desires to want certain things, such as to have a townhouse or to maybe be a housewife, but I'm drawn to believe in the fact that she was conditioned early on and she is under the rule of her family and the expectations of her parents. So I have to wonder if all that came from her fear of failing her parents and their expectations. She does have a very demure personality, and we do see signs that she can be a bit skittish, so that sweetness and innocence combined with the level of hand-holding that her parents have really make me think that she doesn't really have much of a choice in the things that she wants. But I would definitely love to know what people think of this. Whether you agree or disagree, I appreciate you. Thank you if you've made it all the way to the end. I think my videos can get a little bit longer than they need to be. Thank you so much.